Good evening, everyone. Thank you again for being here. My name is Lars Kyle. I am the boys director for Massachusetts Youth Lacrosse. I know that these clinics are cumbersome on your time, but we very much appreciate being able to make it out. Tonight we're talking about goalie coaching. Raise your hand if you are coaching 7-8 this year. Any 5-6? Anything not 5, 6, 7, 8? Okay. This is obviously an extremely abbreviated view on coaching your goalies. Raise your hand if you have. Raise your hand if you played lacrosse in high school or at any point lacrosse in college, high school, anything like that. Okay. Raise your hand if you were a goalie. Great. That's 2. Raise your hand if you have at any point in coaching you have ever taken any time to specifically coach goalies or learned about coaching goalies. Okay, all right, fantastic. So some of this hopefully some of it's new, hopefully it's reinforcing things you've already learned. I am about to pack an entire season's worth of what I want you to know into 40 minutes. And that's more 25, 30 minutes of me talking and then giving you time to help shape this conversation by Q&A at the end. A little bit of background about me. I get to try and fit into the very large shoes of Sean Quirk, who was unable to make it tonight. Sean is a very good friend of mine. We have worked together for many years. He was an All-American goalie himself. He was the head coach at Endicott College for 18 years. He coached the MLL, the Boston Cannons in the MLL for a number of years, and then he was also the Cannons head coach in the PLL for the last couple of years, and just recently stepped down from that. I was on staff with him for 4 years at Endicott College, as well as 3 or 4 years with the Boston Cannons in the MLL. I have been a college lacrosse coach. This is the first year in my professional career where I'm not directly affiliated with the college lacrosse program, and goalie coaching is something that I have focused on my entire career, and that being both college level, boys, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, as well as at the professional level. So hopefully I will be able to do a good enough job. I am with Coach Quirk in thinking that the goalie might be one of, if not the most unique positions in sport. It's not just because they are the quarterback of the defense. It's not just because they have such pressure, that they have to carry such a heavy load, being the literal last line of defense. But from my own personal perspective, from a coaching perspective, I love the fact that there are so many different ways that a goalie can be successful in the cage. What I mean by that is there's a wide spectrum of effectively technique that a goalie can use. You can be a very technical goalie, meaning that everything is very repetitive. It looks like everything is very mechanical. They're very precise. And there are goalies that, even for shots that are going for their hips and up high, they somehow end up on their knees. Those are the floppers. And there's everything that you can possibly think of in between. You can have floppers that stop the ball, and you can have very technical goalies that stop the ball. It's your job to help guide your goalie or goalies to try and find what works for them. And every goalie is different. You may have 2 goalies that are very similar. You might be lucky that you can coach them the same way. But I would not say you should expect to have 2 goalies that you have to coach them in exactly the same way. I'll get into positioning in a little bit, but some goalies will step in certain kinds of ways. Some goalies will have different kinds of arcs. It's just try and take what they give you and help guide them to be a better version of themselves in the cage. At the end of the day, if aside from ready position, step body balance, positioning, all of that, if there's one thing I want you to walk away with from this presentation is to love your goalie. Love your goalie and love them up, because far too often I have talked to goalies and I have seen it where I've seen it at practices. My mind was blown recently in the last couple of days when I found out that a very good young friend of mine who is a Division I college goalie, he has taken a red shirt this year. He has a very good college goalie, a very good goalie on his staff as an assistant coach, played goalie in college, does not coach him. He gets no direct coaching as a college athlete, and my mind is blown. So like I said, aside from all of that, if there's one thing I want you to walk away from, is that make sure that your goalie knows that you appreciate them, that it's not on them. Obviously, like they're the goalie. You want to make sure that they make saves. But regardless of what happens at the end of the game, say, great job, always things to work on, but like make sure that you're paying attention to them in practice, that they feel appreciated. Because ultimately, as the boys director, as part of Mass Youth Lacrosse, my job is to make sure we have more kids playing lacrosse and more kids playing lacrosse longer. I want to reduce the gap of kids who stop playing from 8th grade going into high school. I want Massachusetts to deal with the problems of we have to have 2 JV teams, or we have to have 2 freshman teams, because we as a youth lacrosse organization are doing such a good job making sure that these kids want to play at higher and higher levels. Okay, ready position. A goalie's ready position is literally how they are standing in the cage. Please forgive the 4x4 goal. I will try to abbreviate my steps in what we're doing. Generally speaking, have there been goalies who, like I said before, who have been successful using non-traditional techniques and mechanics? Yes. Sal Locascio, one of the greatest goalies ever, had a super wide stance, his knees were locked, and his gloves were touching on his shaft. And he had hands like lightning, and I had great positioning. He figured out a way to make what he thought was the right way to do it work. That's not for everybody. From generally speaking, in an athletic stance, to think of, for any of you who are football coaches, think about just generally a linebacker. I don't want my weight too far on my toes. I don't want my weight too far back on my heels. Maybe a little bit 60-40 forward. I'm wearing sneakers. If you're assuming that you're, just for the sake of the reference, imagine if your goalie has shoes on. If they're in ready position, you should be able to slide a credit card underneath their heels. But you shouldn't necessarily be able to fit your hand underneath their heels. You want their knees to be bent a little bit. Chin up, chest up, facing the goal, or facing wherever the shooter is. I want to make sure that my hands, where my hand placement, again, this could be like, I'm going to say probably it's going to be a little bit difficult to make good saves if your hands are this far apart. It's going to be difficult to make saves if your hands are this close together. Again, generally speaking, we like to take the goalie's hand. It's going to be up on the actual plastic. I'm not like this. The back of my hand should not be facing where the goalie's is. I'm wrenching my wrist forward like this. It's going to cause problems. It reduces your ability to move in space. I'm going forward. The palm of my hand is going towards the shooter. That's what's going to come up behind on the back of the plastic on the throat. I'm going to pretty much put my elbow down onto the shaft and bring my bottom hand right up underneath the elbow. That is a general rule of thumb. It is not an exact rule. You don't have to stick to that, but that is generally a good place to start. This is an offensive shaft, so I don't have any tape up here. I would also recommend tape on the top of the shaft. For any of you that played back in the day, if you'll understand this, when it gets wet, especially if you have leather gloves, leather palms in your gloves, you want to make sure you have a little bit of grip in the event that it gets wet. I have a little bit of tape here on the middle of my shaft. That's more for me as an offensive player, so I know where my top hand goes, but in this case, it's also great. So if in the middle of everything that's going on, the goalie's tapping his pipes, he doesn't have to look down at his shaft to know where his hand placement should be. So knees, elbows bent, head up, duck feet. Duck feet is something where I don't want my feet pointing straight forward. Obviously, they're not going to be way out to the side. Generally, I want to point my feet in 45-degree angles, and it makes it a little bit easier as far as when they look down at their feet, wherever their feet are pointed, that is the direction that you want their feet to go when they step. So if I'm standing here in the cage, wherever it is, even if the shot's coming directly, if the shot's coming from straight in front of me, you sir, if you're shooting at me, I'm stepping straight forward. Otherwise, I want to be like, even if you're rephrase. If you're standing right there and even though you're directly in front of me, you shoot over here to my stick side, I'm stepping in the direction. I'm not stepping at you. I'm stepping to where I'm going to cut the ball off on its path. Same thing if you shoot to my off stick side. I'm stepping in the direction that my toe is pointed. and that trying to cut the ball off on its path towards the cage. Cushioning between the planes. So to talk a little bit about physically what the goalie should be doing, what you want to see when you're warming up your goalie, what you want to see when your goalie is getting shots in practice, and what you want to see when a goalie is getting shot on in games, physically what they're doing with their stick. Imagine, if I'm going to go turn at a right angle right now, and I'll move around a little bit, I want to imagine that there is a pane of glass in between myself, my chest, and the stick. If I twist my stick, I break the plane. If the head comes back this way, I break the plane. If the butt end comes in, I break the plane. There are goalies, like I said, there are goalies who are successful, they are practiced, and they have repetitive mechanics in breaking the plane. As far as what I believe is the right way to teach kids, especially that are younger, that have only been doing it for a few years, I want to teach their stick to effectively work like a windshield wiper. Their stick should be like, obviously your hands, your hands are connected to the arms, connected to the body, but your stick should effectively work independent of what you're doing with your body. I want to step to get my body behind the ball, which I'll talk about in a second, but whatever it is that my stick is, or that my body is doing, my stick should stay square to where the shot is coming from. I want to stay as big as possible as I can in the cage. I want to keep the face of the stick square towards the shooter. So if I'm here, I'm keeping the stick square like this. Even if the ball's coming underneath for an off-stick hip save, I'm coming like this. I'm keeping the stick out in front of me. A lot of goalies you'll see, they'll do something like this. Can you do that and make saves? Absolutely. Do I like it personally? No, I don't. It annoys the heck out of me. One of the best goalies that I've ever worked with, Eric Haggerty, he's now the head coach at Endicott College. He was a lefty goalie. He would do that. He would come back like this, and he'd make the save like equal or behind his body, off stick hip. It annoyed the heck out of me, but he made the saves. He was a career like 60% save percentage, and he was a 3-time All-American, so there was nothing that I could say. It was my job then to make sure to try to get him as good as he could possibly be doing something that he was already very good at. So like I said, so I'll get into different spots of where shots are, but I should keep my stick out in front of me all the time. So stick side high, stick side hip, stick side low, off stick high, going over off stick hip, coming under off stick hip, off stick low, 5-hole. There are some coaches that like to get the stick down and drive it into the ground. I don't like teaching that. I don't particularly love it. Rebounds, generally speaking, I believe, rebound control, I believe, is more about the skill of the goalie than how a stick is strung. That being said, unfortunately, there are a lot of terribly god-awful strung sticks out there, and some sticks that are strung badly enough definitely, I will say, will make it easier for a goalie to give up rebounds. But I would also say that if you know what you're doing and you're practiced in your motions, you can step and attack the ball and have a literal tennis racket attached to the end of the shaft and not give up rebounds, because you can get out there and give with the ball as you should when making a save with an actual real goalie stick. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did it answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes. What I would prefer, again, it's like, so if I'm doing it from the side, everything should be coming out. The full stick should always be in view of the goalie. If the goalie is doing something like this and the butt end is behind their head and they can't see it, that's an indicator for, okay, if they make the save, there's not a whole lot you can say, but if they don't make the save, that's something to work on. Next, step body mounts. There are situations where it's difficult for goalies to step to try to get their body behind the ball on shots. Those are the kind of situations that you don't want to explain to your goalie. As a general rule of thumb, I want to try to say 100% of the time, 100 out of 100 shots, I want goalies, especially youth goalies, as they're learning and developing their habits and mechanics, they should be stepping to everything. or at least the goal should be to step to everything. They may not, under certain circumstances, if I'm getting shot on from 3 feet, 2-3 yards in front of me, there's not a whole lot the goalie can do in a situation like that. But under realistic shot distances and times and situations, everything they do should be stepping. So that's why, so we just did ready position. So step body balance. Step body balance is step to the ball, get your body behind the ball, balance up. Everything, I know this is a small goal, so it's difficult to illustrate this point. But let's just say that there's another 2 feet over here to this side. If I'm just trying to, how many of you ever seen a goalie where they're trying to make a save and they're ridiculously fully extended? What? Right. So how many of you ever seen a goalie? Raise your hands, say yes. I know you've all done it, but you just may not be able to think about it. If you see a goalie, albeit I'm 6'2", but even if you see a goalie that's 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", if they are fully extended, likely they may not have been in the best possible position to begin with. And I'll get to positioning in a second. You want them to try and step to get to everything. And the reason why I just made the fully extended reference is if a goalie is properly positioned in the cage, it does not take much of a step in order to get their stick to wherever it needs to be able to cover all of the goal from where shots are taken from reasonable places on the field. Does that make sense? Obviously I'm going to get to Q&A at the end. I know I'm also talking very fast. I'm very excited. I love what I'm doing. If I am going too fast and something you genuinely do not understand it, please raise your hand and allow me the opportunity to slow down and try and explain it a different way. So, step body balance. Part of the reason why we want to step, it's one, we want to make it so that it's easier. I have an easier job with my hands to get the stick to where it needs to be and not be fully extended. But the other thing is, I want to try to get my body behind the ball. I want my body to be the backup to the stick to try and make those saves. So if I'm in a position, again, let's say this is a little bit wider of a stick, or wider of a goal. Let's say a ball is coming over here to my hip. I want to try to step to be able to make that save so that if I miss it for whatever reason, my body is there to make the second save. My body is there to save me because I did not do a good enough job to get the ball, to corral and catch the ball in my stick. And then the balance at the end is balancing up. So how many of you have raise your hands if you have spent time in the past warming up your goalies? Great. We'll get to warming up goalies in a second. How many of you seen them, they make saves, and they just get back, they make the save, and they make the save, and before they actually finish the save, they're already going back to where they started and they're throwing you the ball. Raise your hand if you've ever had them do that. Please extend them the knowledge and understanding that they're not going to do that in a game. And even if you're starting your warm-up off slow, they need to be repping, even if they're not doing it at full speed, they should be repping the physical movement in the way that they're going to be doing it in the game. So if I'm here and I'm just going you're going all stick side high, I'm here, I'm finishing the save, I step, try to get my body behind the ball, even if it's up high. I step once, I step twice, I follow that first step up with the second one. I'm effectively back in my ready position. I'm in athletic position. I can step up, I can throw the ball right away. I can go behind the cage if I need to. But I finished the save by following it up with another step. I'm not just here and then trying to push myself all the way back. I want to get there, look up, then I can start making decisions. Okay, positioning is almost everything. How many of you tonight have a goalie on your team that is not awesome? Great, come on. Okay. Being able to be really good from a hand-eye coordination perspective and make sure that this piece of equipment can get behind a ball that's traveling 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in their general direction, it's not easy. It is a very, very difficult skill. it is. I'm sure you probably, if all of you have been coaching for a number of years, I'm sure you've come across either as a goalie on your team or you've played another goalie. How many of you played a team that the other goalie just happens to have a knack for getting hit with a ball? It's probably most of you. There are goalies that just are really good at it. They can't make a save with their stick to save their lives, but they somehow don't let it go in the cage. A goalie's positioning is, if a goalie is in good position, more often than not, he is going to make more saves than not. He's going to have a 50+ save percentage just by, he doesn't have to move his stick. If he's in the right position, he's going to get hit with the ball because he is in the right position. So from a positioning perspective, there are multiple different ways that you can teach an arc. There's 3-step arcs, 4-step arcs, 5-step arcs. In the women's game, they like to build a house. That was something that I learned in jumping from the men's game to coaching the women's game. One of the things that I particularly like to coach, and what from a peak goalie perspective we like to go, is just as a general rule of thumb, having a 5-step arc. What that means on the very abbreviated goal is that my pipe is one point, the other pipe is another point, and then there are 3 other points in between. So, and I'll touch upon communication, but from a positioning on the field perspective, we've got side right, top center, top left, side left. So those 5 positions are effectively where I want to, especially in a controlled environment, but even in the middle of the action, if the ball is generally in one of those 5 spots, that is where I want to try to be. So if I'm here, ball side left, I'm here like this, ball gets thrown up to top corner, top left, ball gets thrown up to the middle, top center, top right, side right. Going back and forth, those 5 spots are something, and I'll talk about drills that you can leave with before we finish up. Practicing their positioning in cage. How many of you have the ability to film your games and try to use that film to help educate your players in the middle of the week? One? Anybody else? I would recommend, even if it's just and this is another way to help connect with your goalies, because again, all of you know how important this position is. This is one of those things. If you can have a parent on your team, a cell phone is not great, but if a cell phone is all you have, and you can get them to set a cell phone up on a tripod on the sideline on whatever end that the goalie is, just so they can see, even if it's eye to eye level, it's not a great angle, but anything is better than nothing in being able to go back after the fact and have your goalie look at his positioning and see what he was doing in cage. I know that we all have families, we all have jobs, we don't have a whole lot of time, but I would imagine and I would hope that you are here because you are invested in this, either in your own children or in the community, and you want to make sure that you see your teams, and for today's presentation's perspective, your goalies succeed, even if you did it for a quarter. So you just literally turn the phone on, zoomed it in so it only looks at the goalie. Hopefully you get a good view of what he does on every shot. When he makes saves, when he lets in goals, you can learn a lot from those. And so, like I said, I'll keep going, but the positioning is incredibly important, because you will find there's a lot of times where the goalie probably should have had it, but because he was out of position, it was very difficult for him to be able to make a good play on the ball. When the ball is at X. Okay, so obviously there's more than just 6 spots in the field. There's 9 effectively, so there's the 5 that are up here. So I'll go, top center, top left, side left, ball's at X, ball's back right, ball side right. As you can see right there's 5 points. When the ball's below goal line extended, am I on those 5 points? Effectively, no. What I want to do is remember, assume that this is a 6 by 6 foot goal. If there's a spot in the middle of this cage, I want to face where that ball is. I'm not this far out, but I want to face where that ball is. So if the ball goes there, it goes to X. I'm here, ball goes that way, I'm back this way a little bit, and I'm in a position where if the ball's here and someone's dodging, like if it looks like the ball's back left or back right, and the ball's attacking, I'm obviously going to get to my pipe. But if the ball is being swung wide, like ball's back there, it's with an attackman, he's not attacking the cage, it gets swung up here to the wing, then I'm going to come over here as ball side left. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Warming up your goalie. By a show of hands, who thinks that warming up the goalie is about the coach? Oh, excellent. Good job. Good job, everyone. No one raised their hand. Warming up the goalie is very much about your goalie. Your job is to make sure that your goalie is in the right mental headspace and to help him prepare physically for what's about to happen in practice and for what is about to happen in the game. So I very much recommend starting off slow and then building up speed as you go along. As a recommendation, generally like to start with 5 to 10 in each of the 7 spots. Stick side high, stick hip, stick low, off stick low, 5-hole. Then you can move on to bounce shots, and then start to kind of mix it up a little bit. You may have, especially for the 7th and 8th grade coaches, you may have some goalies who are also playing club, who are playing lacrosse all year round. They're getting training. Talk to them. See what works for them. If you've got an experienced goalie who's been playing for 3, 4, 5 years, ask them what they like. Ask them what they want. Again, it's a great opportunity to build the relationship with them, help them feel the love that is sometimes it's difficult for them to feel because you have to pay attention to the entire team and not just them. There are some goalies, especially the more experienced ones, who will like, let me back up and rephrase for a little bit. Part of the reason we want to do 5 in one spot, 5 in another spot is so that, especially for the younger goalies, the newer goalies who've only been playing this maybe their first year or second year, you want to give them the confidence of knowing where the ball is going to go. You're just playing pass. You're just playing, you're just passing and catching, and you're trying to throw the ball to a spot. If it's stick side high, you're just trying to throw the ball to his stick. If it's off stick side high, he knows he's got to step, he knows he's got to get the stick over there, try to get his body behind the ball. You're emphasizing stepping to the ball every single time. You're emphasizing getting the body behind the ball on these shots, okay? It's easier for him to do it when it's going slower and start and get loose and get warmed up and then build up speed. So slow is smooth, smooth is fast is a great way to think of it from that perspective. For more experienced goalies, they might want to start slow, but they still want to be able to make a reaction. They still want to have to make a decision on where the ball is going to go. So I've also had goalies that are like, okay, mix it up high, mix it up hips, mix it up low, then go to bouncers, then mix it up all over the place. And so I'm standing here, I'm trying to make a save. I don't know where you're going to shoot it. I still have to step and make a save and react to the ball, but I also I understand that the shots are not coming super fast, so I have a little bit more time to make that decision and then build up with the speed. Okay, some drills to walk away with. Muscle memory is incredibly important for goalies. And so raise your hand if you have a difficult time giving your goalie something to do when you've got 18, 20, 22 other kids in the team and you got to make sure that everyone's doing everything. Raise your hands. Should be everybody. I totally understand. Especially if you have multiple goalies. Even if you only have one, they're in every drill that you need a goalie in, but especially if you have more than one, there's going to be goalies that are just standing around doing nothing. I do not support goalies standing around doing nothing all day at practice. If you have 2 goalies that are, and you're doing a drill where you don't need a goalie in the net, first and foremost, if it has anything to do with passing, catching, running, and scooping up ground balls, they should be in the drill. But there are certainly circumstances where the goalies are not going to be very effective with whatever it is that the rest of the field team is doing. So juggling, individual juggling, partner juggling. I am not a goalie. I was an offensive player by trade, but I focused on coaching defense and coaching goalies once I got to the college level. But there's multiple, like YouTube is obviously a wonderful resource. You can find multiple, they don't have to become master jugglers if they want to, that's great. but just little hand-eye coordination, repetition at the beginning of practice. I see a lot of goalies do that. They'll do, 2 balls, 1 hand, 3 balls, 1 hand, 3 balls, 2 hands, 4 balls, 2 hands. They'll do 3 balls off the wall. They'll do that, like they'll do drills where if you and I are working together, I have 2 balls, you have 2 balls, I'm throwing one to you, I'm throwing one to myself, and I'm catching the one from you at the same time. So there's 4 balls going in a rectangle all at once. There's a wide variety of options. If you have wall ball, I believe, and I firmly believe this, even as an offensive player, your goalie should have the best stick skills on the team. Your goalie should have the best stick skills on the team. If the worst possible compliment a goalie can get is that he's a great stopper. If all the goalie can do is make a whole bunch of saves, that's great, but you are drastically limiting what your team can do if he has to make that save and then kind of back up and wait for a short stick, midi or one of his defensemen to come over so he can flip the ball because he can't throw it. It slows down everything unless the other team set up their ride. It makes it much more difficult to clear the ball. The better stick skills your goalie has, the better your team will hopefully be in clearing. Raise your hand if you think goalies should have a weak hand that's as good as their strong hand, throwing and catching. You're not wrong. But this is the only situation where I would say that the goalie goalie only really needs one hand. If Marty Bose, who's one of our education directors, was here, the one thing that they need to be able to do is make all the throws they need to with their right hand. They should be able to face dodge in traffic and do a backhand scoop in a lot of different situations, especially if they are under duress in the ride. It's great if they can do a whole bunch of fun stuff with their offhand. I'll never tell you not to have them practice it, but they should be focusing more heavily on their strong hand as far as throwing and catching is concerned. Walking the line. Raise your hand if you ever heard of walking the line as a coach who coaches goalies. I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4. Cam, you don't count. You've worked goalie camps for way too long. Walking the line is a drill that a goalie can do all by themselves with no ball and no supervision. It's something that you probably, once you start a goalie off and doing it, you probably need to watch them out of the corner of their eye to make sure they're not screwing around. But as a lacrosse goalie playing on a lacrosse field that is hopefully aligned, walking the line is a drill that they can get great reps at making saves. It's a mental visualization exercise, and it's also, it'll start for them being very slow, but as they do it, getting the reps, getting the tens of reps and the hundreds of reps and the thousands of reps at this, they'll be able to get more reps in less time. So I want to straddle, here's a line that I have, this is the volleyball sideline. So if I'm setting up like this, every time that I'm stepping in a direction. So I'm going to practice, stick side high, five saves. So I'm here in ready position. I step, I look up here, I've made the save, I look down at my feet, I've got one foot that's almost on the line, that's okay. I'm still generally lined up towards where the shooter is coming from. Imagine the shooter is directly on this line. I still want to be square to the shooter when I finish the save. So even if I'm going over off stick hip, I step, off stick hip, I'm still square. This foot is kind of off to the side, but I'm still pretty square to where the shooter is. My back foot is, and my second step is right there on the line. I'm still squared up. Okay, I reset myself. Okay, stick side low, I go like this. All right, now, I am not square to the shooter. If the shooter was coming in on that line, I had rotated a little bit. If I made the save, that's great. But if I did something, did I make the mistake, or in this case, did I make that save by accident? Or did I make that save on purpose? So that's what I'm saying. I can, as a goalie, and this might take a little while for you to walk them through it at the beginning, but hopefully you can talk to them through it once. You watch them out of the corner of their eye as they're doing it as practice goes on and as the weeks go on, and hopefully they can do this every single practice. If you want to start them doing from the end line to the midline, if they want to do an entire sideline of the field, it's great reps for them. It's reps, like I said, it's mental visualization. They can teach them about positive self-talk. That's fantastic. Footwork and agility. Goalies need to be quick. They don't. How many of you have a goalie that let's be nice and say they are less than athletic? It's totally okay. As the years go on, we have the goalie position. It's not relegated to the kid who's the slowest. It's not where it may very well be where slower guys end up. But even if this is somebody who does not if he's not the thinnest and most athletic player on the field, that does not mean that he should not be working on trying to be quick in the cage. You do not have to be the best athlete on the field to play goalie. It helps, it's great when you do, but it's not necessary. That being said, they should be working on their footwork and agility every single day at practice. That should be part of their warm-up. Potentially they do it before their actual shots warm up, they can do it after, but even if it's just 2 foot forward and back, 2 foot left and right, 1 foot left and right, 1 foot forward and back, ladders. If you can keep a ladder drill, a 10 ladder thing or 20 or something like that, if you have a couple of those, you keep them in your kit when you go to practice every day. Sending the entire team through it is going to be a good thing. It's something that a goalie can take and go do drills on their own. They should be doing, drills with their stick, ready position, and there's keeping their head up, trying not to look at their feet. They can go through a lot of footwork drills while they're spending time on their own. Lastly, before I get to questions, something that I found out and kind of realized when in the first few years that I was coaching the defense, I was obviously coaching and working with the goalies every day, but I was the de facto defensive coordinator on the staff that I was on. Something that I did not hear a lot of other coaches talk about, and so some of you may have heard of this, some of you may to completely understand, but I would also try and talk to other coaches about this, and it was a brand new, it was a completely foreign concept to them. So, what you do with your defense, how you set your defense up, what defensive rules you apply to what you want to run, whether you're sliding adjacent all the time, whether you want to try to run a zone, whether you want to be sliding from the crease, whatever it might be. What you are teaching your defenders and your defensive midfielder, all of your midfielders, what they are going to do on the field directly impacts what kind of shots your goalie will see. So once I came to that realization, I'm like, okay. It blew my mind that other coaches who had been coaching longer than I have didn't really understand this, but I changed the way that I taught the defense, and I changed the way that I taught them the rules of what we wanted to accomplish, because everything I wanted them to do, how many of you ever played a game where the other team has never taken a shot? The other team is going to shoot. What you teach your defense to do on the field will dictate what kind of shots they take. If you talk to your goalie about what is easier for them to make saves on and what's more difficult for them to make saves on, have your defense do whatever it is that makes your goalie feel better about being in the cage. Generally speaking, if I'm a goalie and I'm in cage here, where's the last place I want to see shots from? Anybody? Right in front of me. Okay. Make sure there's somebody there all the time. Doesn't matter if you're, if you're sliding adjacent, that's great. If you're sliding from somebody on the crease, make sure there's somebody to back them up. That's a rule. No one slides off the crease unless they got backup, because that guy standing right there is the last person I want to see touch the ball. Do I want to see step-down shots from 8 yards, even if they're up here? Undefended? Hopefully not. Okay, what are we going to do? Where do we want to drive the ball? Okay, and so again, this gets a little bit into what I wanted to do and what I would want to teach. But I don't care if I've got the best righty shooter on the run in Massachusetts running down the righty alley getting ready to shoot. Hopefully you'll have an idea, especially for those of us who are coaching select, hopefully you have an idea of who that kid is. Slide early to him. Give him his right hand. Everybody knows where he's going. Force him to exactly where you want him to go. Slide early and make him make decisions under duress, under pressure. It's especially at the youth level, you all understand it's really difficult for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders to make decisions at full speed when they're under pressure. When there's no pressure, it's a little bit easier, but it's still not easy. So that's one of the last things I want to talk about before we start taking questions. It's what you do and how you teach your defense, and what you have them do should be part of your overall defensive strategy about how to make sure that the shots that you're allowing the other team to take are the kind of shots that your goalie is better at saving than shots that he is not as good at saving. That last bit, does everybody understand conceptually what all that means? Is that over anybody's head? Okay. So it is 8:19. I've got about 10 or 12 minutes. Questions. This is about, I want to know what you want to know about it. Yes, sir. Yes. What are the go-to tech? So you're saying, what do you want the goalie to do when the defense breaks down and the goalie is screwed? Try to be in the best possible position in the cage for where the offensive player with the ball is coming from. If it's a lefty dodging on the left side and kind of gets underneath this guy and he's coming straight at the goalie over here, if I'm a righty, if he's coming down like this and there's no slide and he's going to shoot, maybe he's not coming in too close, but I want to give up a little bit more stick side than off stick side, and I want to try to be as set and ready as I possibly can before he shoots. A goalie's ability to make good plays in the ball when they are not set and ready is vastly decreased than when he is balanced in a good athletic position. So, follow up. You'd run out and try to hit him. I don't believe that shot that you're saying, if you rushed out to try and make him have to make a decision again under pressure because he's probably not going to expect a goalie to come out. Maybe. All of that situation, not the goalie's fault. Not something I would ever. So this is something that I'm sure many of you have worked with goalies. There are shots your goalie are going to see that you are my belief, my opinion. If you call a timeout or if that goal ends a quarter, you should walk out and you're going to say, you know what, that's not your fault. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and talk to the defense and be like, all of you go apologize to your goalie because you let him down. That is not his responsibility it is not a goalie's responsibility to save shots inside of 5 yards undefended. When an offensive player doesn't score on situations like that, I'm yelling at the offensive guy if I'm the other coach. Undefended shots, in my opinion, from an offensive perspective, undefended shots from a reasonable distance have to be on cage. I'm not saying they all have to be goals, but they have to be on cage. If your defense allows a shot from an unreasonable distance, undefended, do the best you can. Be as ready as you can before he shoots. Be in the best position that you can be. I'm not going to tell you not to tell him to rush him out because situationally dependent, and we could play that game all the time. But it's be in the best position he can be as ready as possible. Question?
Can you talk about depth in the crease?
Depth in the crease. How many of you watch the PLL? How many of you have heard of a goalie named Dylan Ward? A couple. Dylan Ward is a goalie. He plays goalie both for the Water Dogs, and they won the championship this past summer. He also plays in the NLL. He's goalie in both. Dylan Ward is a goalie who will, throughout the course of the save, and I don't have obviously a crease here, he will end up he will walk himself out where his feet are literally touching the crease. I will never ever recommend teaching that to a goalie. Generally speaking, he's an incredible outlier, and he's an incredible goalie. He's figured out a way to do it, but I don't know how you teach that. Generally speaking, one reasonable step out of the cage, because then you're still trying to step forward to make plays on the ball, but it's kind of like that's part of why we call it arc. It's not a half moon. It's not a half circle where I'm like stepping out that far. It's a small arc. So just like one reasonable step out. You, sir, you had a question.
I was going to ask, quick 30 seconds on the head. What are we looking for?
How many of you have no idea when it comes to the equipment in the head and the stringing? Raise your hand if you don't know what's going on with it. There, okay, opposite. Raise your hand if you think you have a good idea about what the stick should be doing and what it should look like. Okay. In addition to being the boys director, in addition to coaching college lacrosse and being involved at Division 1, 2, 3 and on the men's and women's side for the past 5 years, I have my own business stringing sticks. And I'm very thankful that business is good. So this is like, I would not have gotten into this if you hadn't asked this, sir, but thank you for letting me continue to gush. Honestly, I want to stand here and give you a 45-minute talk about sticks. I wish I could do that. I could sit here and give you 10 one-hour-long sessions talking about sticks. All I can tell you is, whether it be the goalie stick or any field player stick, how many of you have heard of the word whip? How many of you know what it means? I will bet for every single person that raised their hands, one out of every three is going to be a completely different answer to the question of what is whip. I ended up writing my graduate school research paper on the topic, and the best thing that I could come up with is it's a word that people use to describe the manner in which the ball comes out of a stick to be thrown in the sport of lacrosse at a given target. Nobody has any idea what it means. All I want to tell you is, for your goalie stick and for all of your field player sticks, all of you have, everyone here has coached. Is there anybody here no one here has not coached lacrosse before? You all know what it should look like when someone has a stick that is easy to use. That's it. If it's not easy for your player to use to catch the ball and throw the ball to the target, give them a couple of opportunities to prove themselves that they have an idea, because there's always, guys take bad shots, or guys will throw bad passes. But the stick is, I think, the most underrated and underappreciated piece of position. No other sport that I've ever heard of, and I have not done the research to all of them, but I pay attention to sport in a general theme. There's no other sport that I've ever heard of that has the implement with which a player uses to play this sport not only varies from position to position, but also play style to play style. It's an incredibly unique implement that we use to play our sport. From a stringing perspective, there's probably somebody on a lot of your teams, there's a kid on many of your teams that is good at stringing and likes to do it. I would say, as long as that kid is giving other people on the team sticks that are easy for them to use, let them keep doing it. If any of you have a store locally that has that offers the service of stringing sticks, there's a number of Lacrosse Limiteds in Massachusetts, and I know there's a Laxloff in Wilmington I know is very well. I know that's not too far from here. It's not close, but finding somebody that you know as a coach, that if you can't do it yourself, that you know who to direct your players to get a stick strung, I think will pay dividends in the long run by the end of the season. Because if everybody has a stick that's easy to use, all of you know how much that's going to help just on throwing and catching, which is a fair amount of what we're trying to accomplish. As a coach warming up the goalie, if this is going to come down to your relationship with your goalie and what they want, I think that's when you talk to them and try to figure out what the warm-up progression is going to be, ask them what they want, make sure that you're also mixing in what they need. As a coach, one of the things that I like to do, I like to separate the physical movements of making a save from moving from point to point in the arc. So if I'm the goalie, if I'm the shooter, the goal is right here. I'm starting at 12 yards and I'm not moving left and right. So I'm just stepping here, I'm form shooting for me, I'm trying to shoot slowly in a way that he will see on the field. I'll hit all the spots there. I'll start backing up as I go, but he's not moving on his arc. Once I have finished all 7 spots and some bounce shots, then I will start then I'll start moving around a little bit. And if I have the opportunity and I have somebody else, another coach or another player, say if there's an injured player, to help feed me balls, to work on things like, okay, I'm set to the ball, he throws it to the other side, goalie has to move. Those are separate drills that I like to work on individually, and then leading up to, shooting hard from the outside, 15, 16 yards, shots on the run, things like that. More questions? Shoot. Tips for goalies on clearing the ball. Like I said, wall ball, like just getting general confidence in their stick skills. Do you have any specific situations that you're meaning, or just generally in clear?
A lot of times they just wait too long. We need to have quite a bit of that.
How many of you have heard of the triple threat position for, it's generally a women's lacrosse term, but how many of you have heard of triple threat position? Many. So, if you have the ball, if the goalie has the ball, as he from the second that he makes the save and raises his head up to look at what's going on, the next thing that happens after he raises his head up, I believe, should be putting his stick in a position so that when he sees somebody who wants to throw it to him, all he has to do is step and throw. So goalies that are walking up, if I'm walking up the field like this, I am not ready to throw the ball. Whereas if I make the save, and I see that no one's there in front of me and everyone kind of starts moving up the field, I want to try and set myself up here. I've got the ball in my stick. I'm scanning the field. I'm trying to be as ready as I possibly can. So as soon as I see someone who I can throw the ball to, I can just get the ball out right away. Does that answer your question? Yes.
I hope I'm not the only one in this situation, but how do you get kids interested in playing goalie? For a personnel question, whereas my goalie's moved
How
on.
many of you have this problem? Holy shit. How do you get someone, if you a lot of you raise your hand. How many of you right now don't have a traditional goalie who's going to play the role? Okay. Goalies are a little tapped. It takes, it takes a few, missing a few, lug nuts to really embrace the position. If you do not have a goalie, I suggest communicating with your parents that you're going to say something like, we are going to, until which time we can find a goalie to play full-time, someone who really wants to embrace it and love that position up, we are going to play goalie by committee. And we are going to have one player per week. Obviously, this is hopefully select teams have goalies, but for Classic, I certainly understand this a little bit better. And let them know ahead of time. And it's if you've got your 8 games, everyone's not going to play. But figure out the fairest way that you possibly can to say, okay, this is the goalie for next week, and give them, especially, going back to what I said about loving their goalies up, give them, especially if you are playing a new goalie every week. I know you can't be with them every second of every practice leading up to the game that they're going to play goalie in, but please try extra hard to make sure that you are appreciative of them. Talk to the players about being appreciative of them for stepping into the cage, because it's not something many of them are going to be comfortable with. I find generally, more so than just in this situation, try to find natural competitors, people that want to play and that want to play hard. Anyone, kids that play football who are used to contact, and you can say hey, this is, again, it's positioning. Get your body behind, step body balance. Get your body behind the ball. It's like I said, you got to be a little tapped. Great. Show me a goalie. You'll never find a goalie that's not a really high level goalie doesn't have a screw loose. It's just, I've never seen it. One way to try and sell goalie being in the position for more than just one game at a time, playing time. If you want it, it's like you were going to be in for every second of every drill that we need a goalie, and you're going to be in every second of that game, and you're not coming out. That will be a good selling point for a lot of kids that are like, especially for midfielders who are coming on and off and on and off and on and off. And if you've got, you've got extra bodies in attack and defense, they're not playing every second of every game. It's like, you're the goalie, especially if you're the only one. That's you, buddy. It's all, like, you're never, not taking you out, not putting somebody else in. Like, you've got all the gear on. Finding the competitors, find the kids who want to play hard, and again, sell them on playing time and love them up.
I got to follow up. Is there any way, in your eyes, to introduce the idea of playing goalie like into practices? So instead of just going, game one, picking and choosing, it's maybe I can filter out who maybe seems a little bit quick and I can work with them for weeks.
That's tough. I don't like. Another thing that I'll say would be a great drill, a great way to help indoctrinate someone who's not a traditional goalie into the position is using the squishy pink. The STX has pink squishy balls. They use them for phys ed a lot of time. Tennis balls. There's no offensive player that I've ever known or heard of who couldn't practice with soft hands, catching and throwing with balls that are not, official rubber and the regular weight. That will help indoctrinate them, but otherwise it's just try do the best you possibly can.
Yeah. I was thinking more in terms of like drills. So the idea of like we start practice, we don't have a goalie set up. What's something easy that we can like, hey, let's filter through everything.
Stand up. Grab your water bottle real quick. We're almost done. So I'm the goalie, you're the coach. My stick is down. Have them have everything else on, but a way to help get into the actual act of making the saves. Again, stick side high, stick hip, off hip, stick low, off low, 5-hole. Have them stand there, work on being in ready position. You should be able to stand, your goalie should be able to stand in ready position for extended periods of time. Now, that's not going to be 5 minutes. And they don't have to be like this rigid every time. If the ball goes out of bounds, they can stand up a little bit, but they quickly have to get back into ready position. And they need to be able to stay there. If they have the question of when do I get in ready position, if the other team has the ball on the defensive half of the field, they should be in ready position. They will stick with that, and they'll figure out the random times when they don't necessarily have to be right there. But as a coach, you want to be like, I can be right here. I can do 2 hands in front, or often you'll see goalies that'll put 1 hand behind their back, and you're just going to toss that water. Typically, this will be a ball, not a water bottle, but just so you see it. So it's here. I'm trying to step, and then you're just working on these mechanics. So I'm just trying to, and the thing is, ready position, step to everything. And I want to try to catch the ball. Even if you're throwing it down low, I'm here. I'm trying to step, get my body behind it. Even if you're going over off stick side, I'm trying to step and get to everything. That is a great way to help them get into the motions, thank you very much, of starting to do it. And then as you warm up to that, then they can start it. I don't know if there's a clear delineation of whether if you go to the stick, I think you should do with the stick next, where you back up a little bit, you're still underhand tossing the ball, maybe by a little bit farther away, maybe throwing it a little bit harder. Maybe they can try to do this here with no bottom hand, but they should be trying to keep that stick out in front of them. You can see the entire thing throughout the entire save. Work them to 2 hands, work to doing that from 10, 11, 12 yards with a stick, and slowly building them up. Because that's, again, it's time you can love up your goalie, give him good positive reinforcement, working on step body balance, working on positioning in the cage. One more, if anyone has anything left, before I'll just completely stop talking. Yes, please. How far away was it? Is there a good way to talk about stopping like low to low shots? As someone who's coached offense or has played offense and also worked on offensive skills with offensive players, I tend to preach shooting overhand as much as possible. Everyone does not apply to that policy. As long as offensive players are taking shots and they're putting them on cage, there's not much that I can argue with, especially if they're scoring goals. Offensive players are going to take shots from multiple different slots. They'll go straight overhand, they'll be 3/4, they'll be sidearm, they'll be kind of underhand. there's not as many that'll come straight, like directly. I'm shooting like right under, like parallel with my body underhand. But if I'm stepping up here and I'm shooting underhand like this, I'm going to hope that that should be part of your warm-up. I'm not going to try to tell, if that's my goalie, I want to try and give him those kind of shots. I might not be telling my offense, this is me again, I might not tell my offense that that's what I want them to take, but I would be remiss in my warm-up to not try to shoot like that so that he has seen it before. Just with, and so that's part of, when you're talking to them, again, a good opportunity to love your goalie up, make sure that they know that you care about them and their success. They should be visualizing those saves that they make when they're walking the line. I know what he's doing. They should be visualizing when they're making saves while they walk the line, shooters shooting from all positions. So they should be visualizing, they might do 7 overhands, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7, 3/4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All the way down to them shooting to all those spots, shooting underhand. Low to high, it looks great. I think it's a horrible percentage shot. I don't want to condone it, but it looks really cool when they score. But it's a lot of that's going to come down to how do we prepare our goalies in practice for what we know eventually they will see in the game. It is 8:39. Tom, thank you for being patient with me. Let's take 2-3 minutes, stand up again, go get a drink.
There's water and snacks in the caf also.
There are snacks in the cafeteria. Don't run over each other. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I will continue.